Plant test corrections. All plants and animals have mechanisms that, well, what is a mechanism? A mechanism are parts of, like little machines inside. You see the word machine, mechanism? Well, do they all transport nutrients? I think they do. Let's look at the other ones. Regulate nerves? No. Plants don't have nerves. Perform photosynthesis? No. Animals don't have photosynthesis. Do they all produce flowers? No, animals don't do that. So the only thing they do is transport nutrients. So plants transport nutrients in their stems. Animals transport nutrients in their circulatory system. So if you got this question wrong, you need to say that transporting is a life process. So they must undergo all the life processes. That is how you explain this question. Number 2, what is the main function? Function means job of the plant structure labeled A. That's a flower. So what is the purpose of a flower? Purpose of a flower is reproduction. So if you got this wrong, you are writing the purpose of a flower is for reproduction because flowers make seeds. Seeds are baby plants. What substance or which substance do all living things require to survive? This word substance, many people get confused what that means. The substance is matter. So which substance do all living things require? What do we need to stay alive? All living things need water. And that is why they believe there could be some life on Mars because they found water. Which group is made up of organisms that are all members of the same kingdom? There are 5 kingdoms that we studied in middle school science. When you get to high school, you'll probably learn about 6 because they break down the Monera into smaller categories. But in the interim right now, we know Monera, Protista, fungi. We know animals and plants, or plants and animals in that order. So if you look, these are the only 3 that really are the same thing. Cats and frogs are animals. Mushroom is a fungi. That doesn't go. Grass is a plant. Worms are animals. Sharks are animals. That doesn't go. Mold is a fungi. Bacteria is a Monera, and that's a plant. So this one has all 3 different ones. Plant, plant, and plant again. So they are all plants. The other ones have other things in them. Which object in the tank produces oxygen? Well, in order to produce oxygen, you have to undergo photosynthesis. So the only thing in this tank that produces oxygen is a plant. Rocks are not living, so that doesn't work. And snails and fish undergo respiration that produces carbon dioxide. So plants would be your only choice. Let's go to question number 6. The process by which the plant in the tank produces oxygen is called what? So it makes oxygen. If you didn't know number 5, reading number 6 is going to give you the answer. We need to take the test. We need to use the test to take the test. So if you looked at number 6, that answered number 5 for you. The process by which the plant in the tank produces oxygen is called photosynthesis. Respiration is releasing energy. Every cell in my body needs nutrients and oxygen. Boom, boom, boom. Respiration, that gives us carbon dioxide. Photosynthesis gives us oxygen and glucose. Digestion breaks things down, and nutrition is the process of which we obtain our energy. In which part of the plant does most photosynthesis occur? Keyword right here is most. Photosynthesis, any place where there's chloroplasts. Well, the roots are underground. There can't be chloroplasts. Flowers are reproductive sites. There is no photosynthesis there. Leaves and stems are both possible choices, but most is the keyword. That happens in the leaves. That comes from your notes. Which part of the plant is responsible for the transport of water and materials? Transport is a life process. The part of the plant that is responsible for transport is the stem. This also comes from your notes. These questions were not inference questions. They were all content-based questions. The male reproductive organ of the flower is called the stamen. The stamen and the pistil, the ovary and the egg, the stigma and the style, the reproductive flower. Stamen has anther and filament. That is the male part. The anther produces pollen. The roots, underground. Sepals, the little bud. Those are the little special leaves that protect the bud. And the pistil is the female part. Number 10. A mature plant ovary is a fruit. The ovary matures and becomes a fruit. The ovary holds the seeds, and the seeds are protected by the fruit. 11. To provide energy for work that cells do, energy has to come from nutrients. Every cell in my body needs nutrients and oxygen. Boom, boom, boom. Hope y'all got that one right. Number 12. Which part of a plant anchors and absorbs water? Anchor right there. Keyword from your notes. Roots. A decrease in chlorophyll. So we're getting less chlorophyll. Well, if there's less chlorophyll, we will not be able to undergo photosynthesis. If we're not able to undergo photosynthesis, we can't make glucose. And the byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen. Carbon dioxide, you need. Water, you need. And energy is what you make chemical energy, glucose, but it's not energy yet. It is stored energy. So oxygen would be the best thing. If that said glucose, then I would say it was definitely ambiguous, but it's not. All right, number 14. The main source of energy needed for photosynthesis comes from the sun. The rest of these things are substances. They're matter. The only thing that is energy is the sun. That's the only choice that is possible. Let's go to the next question. A green plant absorbs light. A frog eats flies. Both of these are examples of how organisms obtain energy. Autotrophs and heterotrophs. Heterotrophic eats and hunts for food. Autotrophs make their own food. In which part of the plant cell does photosynthesis occur? It happens inside of the plant's chloroplasts. This directs the cell. This allows things to come in and out, and this gives it a little bit of support and shape and structure. It's made up of cellulose. All right, the flow chart represents the process of photosynthesis. One step in this process is labeled X. So light energy is absorbed by the plants. Then this happens. In order for this to happen, oxygen is released. So what's going to happen at X? Well, light is absorbed by the plants, and the plants are eaten by animals for food, and oxygen is released. That doesn't make any sense. If the plants are eaten by the animals, then they're going to be making carbon dioxide as a byproduct. That's respiration. That doesn't make sense. Carbon dioxide and water are used to make sugar. If the plant makes sugar, it's also going to make oxygen. So that's possible. Let's see. Plants release water into the soil. And then now that doesn't make sense. And animals breathe out carbon dioxide. That's not correct either because that's respiration. So the only possible choice that is correct is this, because this is what is necessary to undergo photosynthesis. Keyword, photosynthesis. Several tomato plants are grown indoors next to a sunny window. The plants receive water and fertilizer and remain on the windowsill. What will most likely happen? Everything is good for these plants. They're getting whatever they need. So they're going to grow. They're not going to wilt and die because it doesn't say anything about them not getting the needs. It doesn't tell you any reason why roots would grow upward. Do roots normally grow upward? No, so nothing unusual is happening, so the roots can't grow upward. Water droplets will collect on the leaves facing away from the window. Why would that happen? Why would water droplets collect on the leaves at all? Unless there was something happening to keep the water droplets in. Like it would have to be inside like a little dome or something. So transpiration can occur. The stem will bend toward the window. All right, will they bend toward the window, the stem? Yes, because they're looking for what? They want the light. They're on the windowsill, so they're going to bend toward the window to get the light. Good job. Number 19. We're almost done. The main function of a plant seed. Well, what is a seed? A seed is a baby plant, and it is planted in the ground. So it doesn't have the ability to get light. So it can't take in light because it's under the ground. Does it have chlorophyll, the plant? Not yet. So what does it do? It has that cotyledon. Remember the cotyledon? Here's your little baby plant. Right here. There's the baby. That's the embryo. And all of this is the cotyledon. The cotyledon is the stored food. Plants need that stored food in order to develop. Once they emerge from the ground, that little seed, then it's mature enough to make chlorophyll and grow. But until then, it relies on the cotyledon, or the stored food, to grow and develop. All right, base your answer on 20 to 23. Identify the structures that protect the flower bud. So if you were bright enough, you did this. 1, 2, 3, 4. What protects the flower bud? B, the sepals. So that would be number 2. Sticky and allows the pollen grain to enter. Here it is. The stigma and the style, the ovary and the eggs, the reproductive flower. Letter D, which is choice 4. Attracts insects to the specialized leaf. They have petals for that reason. Number 1. Part of the male reproductive system that produces pollen. That's the anther. The anther and the filament. The stigma and the style. The ovary and the eggs. The reproductive flower. The anther is the correct choice, which would be number 3. All right, 2 more questions and we're done with part 1. 24. Which part of the plant is directly involved in sexual reproduction? Well, the reproductive organ. Use the test to take the test. It was one of the first questions that you had. Letter A is the reproductive organ. That is the flower. In which part of the plant does most photosynthesis occur? There was another question on your test like this. Where does it occur? In the leaves, choice B. So this is the conclusion of part 1.